Welcome to week two. We're finishing up chapter one this week. And then I also have integrated some weekly readings for you from the weeks really moving forward that help, I think, reinforce the topics that we're talking about and thinking of like how do strategy and competitiveness and mission, vision, and values and all those things really like integrate. And so today we're going to be covering the mission, vision, and values portion. So last time we talked about like what is competitive strategy, like what does strategy look like, and what are some of the different models of how we move from analysis to implementation and then to performance and those sorts of things. So today we'll be looking at the mission, vision, and values elements. I do want to provide a couple of reminders. First of all, you're supposed to be introducing yourself to your classmates. You'll be in small groups, so please be mindful of that. So you'll have an intro post and a response. The intro post is due by Thursday of any given week. So that's normally your question that you ask, and then your response is due by Sunday. So make sure you're adhering to those deadlines and looking at the course outline for that. And then I really do encourage you to start reading the news daily. I think it's in the business section. And so I think it's really important to understand the business news and how all the things going on in the world, in the economy, those like major company happenings, are impacting the business world in general. So if you have any questions about the syllabus or the class, since you've had time now to go through that, I would encourage you to post those to the discussion board that is on the Blackboard Ultra homepage for the course. That way everyone can see the questions that are available. And honestly, you can follow that discussion so that when other students have questions, you might be able to chime in, or then you can also see my responses. So I think that's really helpful for the class. But please ask those broader questions on the discussion board so everyone has access to the answers. And if there's anything personal, or if that sort of thing, please just reach out via email or give me a call or whatever. But the discussion board is great for general questions about the syllabus, the class, the course outline, those sorts of things. And then I do want to push you to think about what you're seeing in the news. So, just in some of the like bigger news that I've been seeing in the past couple of days, I mean, they've talked about the K-shaped economy, but they're starting to talk about that even more. And so the K-shaped economy is that it basically says that things are going really well for the ultra wealthy and corporations and not so well for like middle class people who struggle paycheck to paycheck sort of thing. So, um, so there are essentially like two economic realities going on simultaneously. So I think I mentioned in one of my earlier discussions that, that explains why like economy class tickets on airlines are performing so poorly and why like luxury, like first and business class are performing better, right? Because we're seeing a pickup in spending for the wealthy and for corporations, and we're seeing a decline in spending for for those who are more living an average lifestyle. That has a lot of implications for all sorts of things for like consumer spending, especially for companies. If we think about like retailers that cater or target primarily the average consumer, that could have impacts on their sales and that sort of thing. Again, we can look at the airline industry as an example. There's some big banking news coming forward where like normal lending institutions that really rely on mortgages and that sort of thing to generate revenue have had sort of poor earnings. But banks that cater to the wealthy are actually seeing less of a decline. And there's some news circulating right now that Trump suggests that credit card interest rates should be capped at 10% because over the past several decades they have crept up. But what credit card company, or like banks and credit card companies are saying is that actually this would hurt those lower bracket consumers again because it would make 80% of credit card customers unprofitable. That actually would mean that like JP Morgan Chase could loan less money through credit cards, so it would make credit less available to the average consumer. And so they're suggesting it would impact the average consumer, and that would also negatively impact spending because those average consumers would have less access to credit. So that's some really important stuff going on in the business world right now because it has lots of implications for all sorts of businesses. If you think about it, like Dining Now, retail, those sorts of things. I mean, the access to capital and credit is going to impact car sales, all those sorts of things. So, just, really important things to think about. And you'll be seeing things like that every day in the news, and it will just heighten your understanding of how that impacts the business environment. And you may think that as an entry level employee that doesn't have an impact on you, but it helps explain lots of things that you'll be seeing even in an entry level position and how things are connected and why you might be seeing trends or that sort of thing that allows you to ask good questions. I've had lots of meetings with industry professionals in one of my new roles recently, and the thing they keep talking about that's a differentiator for their entry level employees is curiosity and being able to see connections and engage. And so they will train you in like the specialized reports you need to run, the CRM systems, all those sorts of things. But what they want is for when you see things like, oh, well, we were down $200,000 on safety stock yesterday. Like, why is that you know to ask? And then you go ask the right people, and then you come back with the answers that they've given, and you sort of like synthesize across that. These types of activities that we'll be doing and looking at the news will help you do that. And so if you're wondering why I give these kinds of assignments, it's to help you draw all the connections across concepts so that you're able to be curious, so that you're able to ask good questions. I was just talking the other day to some employers about that people often mistaken the smartest people in the room as those who have all the answers, and then that's not true. The smartest people in the room are asking the best questions because they've listened. So just be mindful of that. I mean, as you're on the market, to think about like how important it is to read the news, to be able to ask good questions in your job interviews, to say, well, I've been seeing this going on in the economy. How does that impact your business right now? I mean, those are great questions. So really important. I'm sorry if I just jumped. I accidentally hit the adjuster on my desk. And so it was about to go to stand-up mode. All right. So in terms of, last time, if you think about it, I had that diagram up and we looked at under the analysis portion, we had external environment, internal environment, and then mission, vision, and values. And so we're going to cover what are the mission, vision, and values for a company today. And this is pretty straightforward information. There are lots of great examples out there. So, go look them up for your favorite company. I think that's really helpful. A mission is going to tell you the business in which a firm intends to compete. So I use the example of Warby Parker. They were really the first company that sort of made buying eyewear accessible to direct to consumer. So previously, the way that things tended to work is that you would go to your optometrist, and then afterwards you would step out and you would buy your contacts or glasses or that sort of thing. And then some companies like disrupted the contacts type model, business model that way. And then Warby Parker came along and said, you know what? Like we can send consumers eyewear to try. They can choose. Then we can get their prescription that they share with us, and then we can send them that direct to consumer. And it's a much better model for the average consumer. So, Warby Parker's mission then is to inspire and impact the world with vision, purpose, and style. So, really, they're telling you that their business is to provide stylish vision wear to consumers. And then their vision, no pun intended, is vision for all, right? So, they want to be able to provide like glasses to a wide variety of target audiences. And that's what it's saying, to provide vision for all. Now, we could even see if they had some sort of like philanthropic or social mission where it was like, okay, for every pair of glasses you buy, we'll give one to someone who can't afford it. Okay, that would fit right in with this. So a vision is where your firm would like to be. I think that it's really important for a vision to be something very short so that everyone in your organization can refer to it. So a vision should really drive decisions. Like, okay, does this new market or new product help us reach vision for all? If so, great. If not, maybe it's something we should consider. It's a good idea that we just don't pursue. So I'll give you an example. When I was running the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, we had a vision, and it was making connections to and for entrepreneurial students. And if somebody brought us an idea that didn't do that, we could say, well, that's a great idea, but it really doesn't fit into our vision. So for example, some folks from Allen County came to us and said, we'd like for you to consider maybe running business planning workshops in Allen County. So like you and Dr. Bolton, the center director, and then I was the Battalion professor for entrepreneurship, would come and you would run these workshops. And I'm like, well, first of all, that's mission overlap with the Small Business Development Center. And our Small Business Development Center rep here actually runs like workshops and that sort of thing on those types of topics and serves Allen County. So that would be mission overlap. Um, but also, if it doesn't make connections to and for our entrepreneurial students, it's not really something we can do. And so it was easy to say, we really appreciate the opportunity. That's a great idea. We can put you in touch with organizations who can do that for you, but that's not really us. Like we more look inward towards our students and work to make connections to and for them. And so in that case, me and Dr. Bolton running business planning workshops in Allen County isn't really the best use of our time. And so I think as much as anything, a vision helps you pursue like the aspiration, but it also helps you say no to things that are unprofitable, or really that aren't within your scope of work. And then values really direct your organization. It should tell your managers and employees what really matters when they make and implement strategic decisions, right? So I've provided Warby Parker's core values here. You can see that like they really want to be a fun and quirky company. That they don't take each other too or themselves too seriously, that they really are going to treat everyone like they want to be treated. It's like part of their values is to be creative, to have integrity, that sort of thing. So you can read through these. I'm not going to go through every one of them, but you can see how these, let's see, 8 different items or values can direct the behaviors and set the culture that they expect in the company. And that's really what values should do. Values should help define your culture so that then the decisions you make strategically related to culture within your firm are going to be very clear. Like it's going to be very clear what you should do. So really important to have these aligned and to make sure they're also aligned with your strategy, which we'll talk about in one of our later weeks. Amazon is a huge company. We're all familiar with it. Honestly, they don't do a great job of laying out their mission and vision really clearly. Even in their investor reports, you can see I've got a link here. You can take a look at it. But it's another example. I mean, you can look at any major retailer, any major restaurant chain. You should be able to find those. Some are more clear than others on what their mission, vision, and values are. And I actually, based on like my interactions with AI, put in and asked it to help me come up with a mission, vision, and values. And I think this is important because as an individual, you should be thinking about what is your mission? Like, what are you doing? Where do you hope or aspire to be, or what do you hope or aspire to be like? Um, or do. And then what are your values? And I think it's really important because if you look at your own values and then companies that you're interviewing with also look at their values, you'll see whether those values align. Like for me, an organization that works to be creative and to find creative solutions to like difficult or complex problems, that is a really core value of mine. And so if an organization doesn't share that, I'm not going to be a good fit there if it's just doing the status quo every day. So you can see that like what I do, what business I'm in is that I'm working to empower students, my colleagues, the other faculty and community partners. And I do that through fostering innovation and purposeful action. So work to help them solve problems. I do that through teaching, mentorship, and being a leader. And that I'm really seeking meaningful opportunities to create growth and impact within the community and bridging the university to the community and doing that and connecting our students and faculty to the community. So that's just a more succinct way to say that, right? And then my vision is equipping others to create lasting positive change in their lives, organizations, and communities. Whether I'm a teacher, whether I'm a researcher, whether I'm a community partner or stakeholder, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to create lasting positive change and help others do so. So it's sort of like paying that forward to equip other people to be able to do that. And then these are my values. Like I believe that high integrity is the only thing that builds trust, and that is of utmost empowerment, of utmost importance to me. Empowerment is another one, is that one of my key strengths is recognizing the goals of others and helping them find ways to achieve those goals. I really value collaboration. and excellence. So you can see the things, and I mentioned innovation before, like all of those things are really important to me. And I do that with a servant heart. And so, having defined these for yourself is really important because there are also things you can talk about in a job interview. If you're talking about what you can add, like what's your value proposition, well, as I can tell you that what I'm really good at and how my values align and how I'm going to show up every day and do that in my role. And so I recently just interviewed for the new role that I took on January 1 last fall, and I talked about these things in that interview. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is on that, guys. Like it really is important for you to define these things. If you've interacted a lot with Gemini or ChatGPT or something like that, like you can even ask it for help and then refine it to more accurately reflect who you are. Now, sometimes it'll be great, sometimes it'll be off, but you should give it a try. It really is helpful. Um, and then in terms of the readings that we did for the week, so you had the look back at Blockbuster and why Netflix ate their lunch. And I think that's such an interesting story. I don't think we ever know, like, unless we read the articles about it, you know that Blockbuster failed. You don't really understand essentially how that came about or that sort of thing. And so, a cautionary tale where late fees were truly its demise. And so that's a great story to help you understand how adaptability is really important and building this monument or this whole strategy on a singular thing that could be the rug could be swept out from under you in a minute. It's really important to avoid that. Then there is another article, and it's also a podcast, so you're welcome to listen to it as well. So, dealing with like, how do you thrive in uncertainty? Like, how do you adapt? Like, what are the things you can do to help make sure that you're able to reinvent yourself or reinvent your business over time? And then competitive advantage is dead. So again, saying that adaptability is the new competitive advantage. And it doesn't mean that you can't have a competitive advantage in traditional areas like customer service or that sort of thing, but you have to be adaptable in how you do that because when technology and consumer taste and preferences shift so rapidly, being adaptable will help keep you afloat. And so these are really good resources. This graphic was actually created by Notebook LM. Such a helpful tool. Like I could have spent a whole day doing this and it wouldn't have looked this nice. So this just helps. If you're a visual person like me, like I would be able to go back to this and see this in my head and remember the key points of what the articles were telling you. So absolutely read them. That's important and take notes on them. But then you have this to go back to help you summarize the material. And so I'll be providing that for you whenever there's an opportunity so that you can see some of the key points and things you should be taking away, right? So like the fact that almost half of CEOs believe their company isn't like viable or sustainable beyond 10 years, like that truly does tell you that like the new strategic playbook is adaptability and thinking about ways to be creative and innovative to gain competitive advantage yet remain adaptable. So in terms of tying everything together, just a nice little summary at the end to hopefully put a bow on it. We vision, mission, and values are like external analysis and internal analysis are going to guide your strategy and what strategy you choose to pursue. We also have to consider our stakeholders and like go back to that model that I presented last time, the hand-drawn one, to think about how does all of this play into strategy implementation and the performance, like the ability to yield above average returns. And then it's important to remember that the CEO is also the chief strategy officer, but that a good CEO is going to have strategic leaders positioned all throughout the organization that are there to help fulfill the vision, mission, and enact the core values. So if you think about it, the CEO is really responsible for the strategic management process. And if we look back at the Blockbuster example, I mean, the CEO at the time, while he did not take Reed Hastings up on his offer from Netflix, tried to peel back those late fees and it impacted profitability. And he didn't have enough of the strategic buy-in throughout the organization to avoid his own demise, right? So if you read the article, he got overthrown. And then I think his Keys came in and reinstated the late fees. And then Blockbuster was bankrupt 5 years later. Well, there wasn't enough buy-in from the board or strategic leaders throughout the organization to support him in that decision. He was trying to move too fast and something that was quite antiquated. So you can see how all of these things tie together. And that's what I'll attempt to do. So you'll have the textbook reading that you need to do every week, and then you'll have the additional readings that I've provided for you that I expect you to do. And we'll really be spending this time tying everything together and learning how it all makes sense. And then hopefully you'll also be bringing in the news that you're reading as we do the packback discussions and thinking about, okay, how are the things we're seeing today in the news? Really showcasing the things that we're learning in class. And then that will set you up to be able to do the second half of the semester project where you're working with an actual business to look at some of these strategic factors. So if you have any questions, please be sure to post them or reach out. I'm here to help however I can.